James Turner. I'm with IBRS and I'm here with Phil Kernick and David Simpson from CQR, and we're talking about cyber risk. Guys, I'm interested in hearing your take about what you're seeing across the Australian landscape right now in terms of the organisations that you're working with. How are they actually going about identifying and managing cyber risks?
I don't think they are. I think that there's certainly a gap in their understanding of what cyber risk really is. Particularly executive level, I think there is an opportunity for executives to become more aware of what cyber risk means for their business, and then also to move on from that, then go, okay, then how do we address that?
Risk is one of those interesting words that people use as if they understand what it means. And historically, it's been easy to judge, but when we've moved into the cybers, it's really hard to get a handle on what the risks really are, what we really need to address, whether it's worth addressing them and what the cost will be and the benefits of doing it.
I think there's also a focus traditionally in the cyber space and information security space on almost the threat model. We think the organisation's thinking threats rather than what this really means to the organisation. So the conversation tends to be driven by people that understand threat and vulnerability conversations, which tends to be at a lower level within the business, whereas the organisation, the exec level, really needs to be talking about, well, what's the consequences to our business if these things occur, and what are we doing in terms of what the best choices we make to manage those? Because we can't manage everything. We've got to be selective, because we don't have a bottomless pit of money, we don't have a bottomless pit of resources. We've got to be selective about how we apply those to get a better outcome for the organisation.
So let's even take it back a step. What is cyber?
Cyber encompasses everything really to do with our businesses today. 20 years ago we talked about IT and how IT wasn't core and how we outsourced it, and then we all discovered that IT was in fact core to our business. That same discussion is happening again today. Historically people have thought security, and we're calling it cyber today, hasn't been an important thing, but now discovering it's now core business. Because all of our business processes across almost every industry, every business, rely on some level of technology at the bottom of it to drive operations, that's where cyber started. But cyber's grown from that. Out of the technology space into the process space, we need to know how to run our technology appropriately, and into the people space, we need to have the right people doing the right things to run the process, to run the technology, to get the outcome. And so the reason we're not calling it IT security or even information security anymore is we want to break that idea that this is a technology problem. Cyber's business security.
And it's not new. We've just got a new label for it. Cyber's a buzzword.
But is there a new relevance? Do you feel a new vibe in the air about it all?
Yes, because it's become more, not relevant as much as more visible to execs. And with the government, the Australian government cybersecurity strategy, that was circulated by the Prime Minister last year. There was a push around that. With the changes that people are making in terms of accountability for executives in terms of cyber risk.
And the ASX health check.
And the ASX, and ASIC's focus on making sure that people are aware that as executives, they have a responsibility to manage cyber risk the same way they're managing safety risks and they're managing environmental risks. And general organisational risk frameworks should reflect the fact that cyber risk is just another form of risk within the organisation.
I have a concern that with the new relevance, I think that people don't understand it well enough yet to be able to treat it in those same areas that historically David just spoke about, and he's absolutely right. Most businesses have a handle on all of those things. This is a new area. It seems to be an important area because we can't see a day in the press when it's not being mentioned again. But if they don't really understand what it means or what it would cost, then it's hard for them to appreciate it in the same light. If we look at environmental risk, there are some fairly easy ways of pricing that and therefore making a decision about whether it's what we should be doing. If you look at human resource risk, you can price that fairly effectively. If you look at property risk, you can price that fairly effectively and then make a really sensible decision about it. But when we get to cyber, it's really hard to price at this point. And not only is it hard to price, it's hard to understand what it covers. And until we do that, it's hard to make sensible risk decisions. So the historical risk approach has been consequence and likelihood. So how likely is this event to occur? And what's the impact, assuming that the event does occur? People can't judge consequence at all anymore. If you are being actively attacked, the consequence is certain. No matter what your risk framework says, the consequence is certain. On the other hand, we just don't have enough to judge well enough. And then impact, we also don't necessarily understand because we haven't valued our business assets, our IT assets, and our information assets. So we don't know what it would cost to do well. So it's fairly easy to come up with a matrix that says consequence, likelihood, do this, do nothing. But I think we really have to judge those two axes very differently than the way we've historically done.
I think to put clarity around what Phil was saying, the consequence you can identify more easily in some of the more tangible loss elements. Mm-hmm. But some of the areas in our information processing, they're more intangible. So how do you value some of those things?
Okay, so give me some examples. What's clearly measurable from a cyber risk perspective?
Financial loss is usually reasonably straightforward when your inability to service your business. Mm-hmm. So there's usually some numbers that can be easily applied to that. The legal and regulatory stuff, if you're fined, if you're in breach of contract, there are certainly penalties that then are imposed, and it's easy to quantify. But it's when we go into what's the impact on internally within your business, what's in the trust model within your business, your employees and your expectations of your employees, and then what is your brand and reputational damage out. It's very hard to quantify. And it becomes hard when organisations are trying to run a multi-dimensional consequence matrix or consequence model, and what happens is the business doesn't get involved in making some of those choices because they see it as an IT issue. Mm. And IT then get to select consequences, and their lens, the lens that they look through, the consequence lens, is different than if you go and talk to the business risk owner.
And then we've got the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Mm. So in many regards, now calling it cyber security and cyber risk is actually in the favour of what we're trying to achieve as an industry because it sort of almost takes it out of IT's hands.
Cyber is information security with a different label, but at least it's shifting, almost a paradigm shift to go, this is not IT. This is a broader, a scary issue because the word is scarier. The people go, oh, cyber security, that's what happens. We see the attacks from all of these bad guys out there on the internet. The challenge that we've got is always to go, do we really understand what we're trying to protect? If so, what are we trying to protect against? And the cyber is such a very large bucket that people put things in, the attacks in. What's really important to the organisation, and how are we then best placed to try and manage that? Mm. Because if we don't understand what's important to us, how are we supposed to manage it?